Welcome to Between Two Clinicians, the podcast that gives you a backstage pass into the mind of two therapists. I'm Talia.
I'm Adam. We've spent years helping others navigate the complexities of their minds and relationships.
In this podcast, we're flipping the script, and we're sharing our own unfiltered insights. No topic is off limits, and no issue too taboo. We're ready to tackle the tough stuff with honesty and empathy. Let's dive in.
Well, hello. Welcome to another wonderful episode of Between Two Clinicians. My name is Adam Luke. I am sitting with the wonderful
Talia Bombola.
We are on, can't believe it, episode 60. This is insane. But we've been wanting to do this topic, and we've had a lot of feedback and other ones that popped up. But this is one that we wanted to talk about, which was the therapeutic ruptures, why they happen, and how to repair. You might be sitting there, what's a therapeutic rupture? Why? Have you ever left like a therapy session feeling like you've been misunderstood or a little something has been off? Did you maybe just have an ending to a therapeutic alliance that you were just like not really comfy about?
Mm-hmm.
This thought process actually popped up because there was a Reddit thread about I fell in love with my psychologist, and you and I, Talia and I, were laughing about it, but at the same time said, you know what, we should probably have a conversation about this.
Yeah, we did an episode on it, that specific trend, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I forget which episode it was. It was a while ago. We did like a brief one, and then that trend sparked other people commenting like, oh wait, not to that level, but some things like that have happened to me in my sessions, or I said something and my therapist misinterpreted what I said, or I hear this a lot, they sided with the person I was talking about rather than with me, or they played devil's advocate, let's say a conflict of like, oh, I was talking to whatever, my aunt and blah, blah, blah. And the therapist is like, well, have you ever considered that your aunt might, and then we're like, what the hell? Like, you're on my side. That isn't not necessarily true in therapy, right? But those are also examples.
My therapist,
right?
You're supposed to tell me she's terrible,
right? So there can be a rupture when there's a misattunement or misinterpretation, and there can be a rupture when a client leaves early because they got too close to a topic that they aren't ready to process, or the therapist mentioned something that the client's not ready to process, so the client might ghost. So all of those and more can be examples of ruptures, and not every time we have a rupture in the therapeutic rapport or the alliance is there a repair. Sometimes because the client doesn't come back, or sometimes because the therapist is conflict avoidant, ironically, and address it. So that's a lot of what we'll talk about more in depth in today's episode.
Yeah, I mean, just to roll off of what you were saying there, I can identify that when I was a young clinician, I probably blew a lot of people out of session because, they're just doing the unfolding of everything in front of them, and I can see where we need to go. Let's go there. And to your point, some people need the process of sort of like dipping a toe in. My mentor at the time sort of said, you got to think about like getting into a cold pool. Some people are going to cannonball and it's not a problem. Others, they start on the first step, get to the second step, and while you're sitting there treading water saying we're wasting time, for them, they're still having quite the meaningful experience.
The rupture could happen because the client wants you to do the cannonball with them and you are a toe in the water therapist, or they want the toe in the water and we're more confrontational. And this is where I think accurate representation in your marketing and filtering of who you are a best match for as a clinician cannot prevent every rupture, of course, because transference and countertransference can also be a cause of ruptures, but it can set from the beginning more of a structure and a tone. This is my style that I practice. Does that work for you or not? If it doesn't work for a client, I would imagine, I don't have the stats on it, but I would imagine the higher likelihood of rupture is to occur when the therapeutic relationship is misattuned from the beginning. The rupture, though, feel more painful or more disappointing when the alliance has been so strong from the beginning and a transference does come in and eclipse what is going on in the room, or
Mm,
the therapist is misattuned because we're people too. We have bad days, and sometimes we don't take the day off when we need to, or we don't think we need to, and we're doing great for 4 out of 5 sessions and one session.
mm,
We're people. We try our best to keep that separate, but it does happen. And so the rupture could be more lasting if the attunement is there. So there's like a magnitude,
mm,
I think, when we aren't attuned, the ruptures are more likely to be frequent or in the beginning. And if we are really attuned, when a rupture, God forbid, or whatever, person forbid,
yeah.
happens, the depth is more painful because it feels like a betrayal of like, what? Like, you
Mm,
know me so well, why did that happen? And I've shared on here before, I've had that happen a couple times with the analysts I've seen for over 3 years now. One of the times it was alliance with my mom, I think, what I was bringing up. She wasn't in the room, but like
mm,
verbally. And then another time was, I want to say early postpartum, and I had not been, I took a huge,
okay.
like a 6 month break after this because I was livid when it happened. I was in the thick, now understanding an abusive relationship, and I was telling her, not
Mm,
because I was still his PR manager at the time. And based on that, which is understandable,
absolutely.
was like, I don't, this doesn't sound like who you've described him to be, which was true.
Mm,
In the thick of where I was at, it felt like such a betrayal of like, great, now you're siding with him too. And I even wrote out a note to share with her later. I thank God didn't send it because it was really fucking mean. And it wasn't at her, it was my stuff that it
oh,
brought.
yeah.
And I put it into a note and I waited on it. And the next day I rewrote it and I just put clinically, like, I need to work with somebody. I need a
Mm,
break and I need to work with somebody who specializes in postpartum. I appreciate all the work we've done so far, but I'm not, whatever you listed last session really triggered me and I'm not ready to go there right now. I
mm,
focus on my kid. She said, okay. Months later, months passed by. So we never got to address the rupture
yeah.
right after it happened, is why I'm bringing this up. Months later, I was having an interaction with my mom and my daughter. It triggered me and I was like, gotta call Dr.
Mother.
And I texted her and I said, hey, I think I'm ready to come back. And in the first session, I said, but I'm not willing to move forward unless we address what happened.
Mm,
Here's my explanation. And she was like, I can see how you felt missed in that. And I can see even more that you were with somebody who's
mhm,
like Jekyll and Hyde, but how you were portraying him in here was like Sully from Monsters Inc. Like
mm,
affable, lovable, still a little monstrous, but not like
yeah.
sociopathic almost. And so to be able to go back and be brave enough to say like, hey, you messed up here in
Mm,
my opinion, and I'm not trusting this without repair,
yeah.
is sometimes the client's role. Let us know if we've messed up. If we don't know that we've messed up, we can
Mm,
apology or repair. That's true of anyone. But
everything.
I have lived this in my like client when I'm
Mm,
a therapist, and I've lived it when I'm the and my therapist has said something where I'm like, screw you, I don't want to
mm,
go there. I don't feel attuned to in the moment, but I'm not going to just pull the ripcord because of it. Rarely is
yeah.
it such a terrible rupture that that treatment can't continue after, is where I'll pause and I want you.
Mm. Yeah, I think that if you have done therapy with anyone for any length of time and you haven't gotten to resistance, hesitancy, some level of conflict, I would wonder how deep in the therapy process you've actually been.
Mm,
Because a true therapist isn't going to sit there and just people please. They shouldn't, where essentially they're just a charismatic cheerleader.
right.
Absolutely, I have unconditional positive regard for my clients, but I also have to stay rooted in the conviction of what is the goal we're working towards. And I think there's also moments like I've seen that happen with
Mhm.
most of the ruptures that have happened, that I can sort of identify. It came from calling my client out and something that was probably already in our informed consent.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you keep canceling last minute.
Mhm.
I've been, I go a little lax on the cancellation thing. I work with a lot of stay-at-home moms, a lot of working dads. Like, I understand things can pop up, but if there starts to be a behavioral pattern where it's like, okay, we're pushing back every week, then I have to have that coming to Jesus
Yeah.
conversation. And it's interesting because sometimes that conversation comes via email when they say, well, hey, I was charged for that session. And it's like, yeah, it's in our informed consent.
Yeah.
I didn't charge you for two previous ones, but I charged you for this one. And what's interesting is watching the, well, here comes the excuses pouring out. And see, this is where a therapist differentiates themselves from a friend,
Mm.
because a friend will buy in on your excuses. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, things happen, all this other. But I'm that's not me. I'm not there for the excuses. I'm there to hold you accountable.
Yes.
If weekly therapy or biweekly therapy or whatever the way that you schedule it is important to you and you aren't showing up in that capacity, I should say something.
Mhm. Yeah.
But it's amazing how many times you sort of charge that late cancellation and then that person never comes back. Or
Mhm.
when you say, I'm not refunding it actually for this time because I haven't applied it in all these other cases, but I
Mhm.
need to do it for here.
Mhm.
That then, oh, well, therapy never worked and I'm gone.
Yes, the claim that the therapeutic process was ineffective or therapy didn't work based on the client's lack of participation is noteworthy because there is an accountability that a lot it's the I talk to my associates about this a lot. It's like if you're a client of a personal trainer and you eat junk food all the time, you do not follow the regimen that they give you, and you're only showing up to one of the two in-person trainings you have, that doesn't mean personal training isn't working. You're not
Correct.
working at it. So the same thing with therapy, and that's why I think a well-trained therapist can start to notice, especially in the like the analytic frame, like what are they enacting or what are they working
Mm,
through, and how is that coming out in the therapeutic process. We get to a really deep topic or a confrontational topic, and then miraculously the next session they cancel. One-off time, probably not a pattern. But if you notice over the course of, oh, we
mm-hmm,
get a few weeks under our belt or a month or so under our belt, and then or 2 months under our belt, and then depth comes into the picture, and they're wanting to pull back. Sometimes they'll cancel, or we have to cancel. Right? Life happens.
mm,
Whatever else, we don't charge them. I don't charge if I cancel last minute, or if I can reschedule, I offer it. And then sometimes the client, out of retaliation, subconsciously will cancel the next one, or they'll cancel and then
mm,
they'll charge and then they'll ghost for the next week, or they'll say, oh, I'm not going to be there next week either, and then it's like this power play. So knowing what gets acted out in the therapeutic process can also help guide how do we navigate ruptures, and what
mm,
bringing in, are they saying they're a people pleaser, they're conflict avoidant, they struggle when people don't like them or when they feel betrayed to voice
mm-hmm.
how to move forward. And that's where I think we can model for them, hey, accountability, you signed this
Yeah.
informed consent, I will be holding that boundary, I understand you'll have emotions around that, you're more than welcome to voice those next session, and being open to hearing what they have to say, not getting defensive as the therapist, because that is
Mm-hmm.
to learn. And not every client's going to want to work through the rupture, even if it's a self-inflicted rupture. And
Correct.
not every therapist is willing to or trained to know how to navigate that rupture and repair
Mm-hmm.
discussion. A lot of us like it when it feels good and easy, but when therapy becomes harder work, or
Oh
we're at
yeah.
the point where we have to make that decision, this is like that's the art and science of psychotherapy in action.
I mean, it's just hearing you sort of talk that way. Something that happened to me several years ago is I ended up processing with my therapist a rupture that happened with the client, um, because I normally have a good gauge on my clients and where
Yeah.
they're at, their level of commitment is. I'd been working with this client for 7 months. We were doing tremendous work. There were so many. Uh, the client was even articulating like, "I'm seeing these growths. I'm seeing this change. There's just amazing, right?" And then the cancellation session, right? So I had moved the schedule several times. Oh, can't make it, can't make it, can't make it. Finally, I said, well, I need to charge because you didn't show up.
Hmm.
So I was sitting there, right? Um, Client then sends me a text afterwards. I see I was charged. Please take me off the list. I'll get back to you whenever.
Hmm.
So, okay, no problem. And paused. this person is quite busy normally in life. So I thought, oh, maybe he's just coming into a busy season. And 3 weeks go by. That's also part of my informed consent. After 3 weeks, if there
Same.
has been no contact, I'm going to move you to inactive. And how I do that is I call, just confirm, say this is what we're going to do as the informed consent, and left a message. And he called back the next day. He said, I have found, I don't think I've gotten anything out of therapy, and just read me the riot act. Was basically saying I was just there for money, right? And that's where I had to recognize that maybe I hadn't been paying attention to the countertransference,
Mm,
right? Like I had become extremely invested in making sure that they got the results that they wanted, that their family had the repairs that were needed, all these things were there. That's what I was invested into. So much so that I forgot that this relationship is, to a certain degree, transactional.
mm,
You know, I'm their therapist, I'm not their friend, and
right.
I'm not owed that conclusion, right?
Yeah.
So that was interesting to go from someone who would meet almost bi-weekly to silence. And what is that like? And how are you going to navigate it? And there's so much of it of recognizing what you have to let go, which
Mhm.
is I'm unwilling to assign the position of who's right or wrong. That
Right.
gets me nowhere.
True.
But being able to be in the moment of going, okay, there was a rupture, and I'm going to release this individual. Like this is it. I wish them the best. I still have unconditional positive regard for them, but I refuse to go down the path of resentment.
Hey there, listeners. Are you tired of settling for less than you deserve in your relationships? Do you ever feel like you're not being seen, heard, or valued the way that you want? Or maybe you've been wondering why you keep attracting the same kinds of people into your life, or why certain patterns seem to repeat themselves in your relationships. The answer might be deeper than you think, and you can find it in my new course. Rewire Your Relationships is a transformative course designed to help you stop settling for less than you deserve and start embodying your most confident, assertive, and authentic self in your relationships. You'll explore how your early experiences and parental influences have shaped your views on love, dating, and self worth. This isn't just about tips and tricks for dating, it's about understanding the core beliefs that drive your relationships that you attract. You'll learn how to break free from those old patterns and start creating the kind of connections that truly reflect who you are. Imagine stepping into a relationship with clarity and confidence, knowing you're attracting people who value and respect you for who you really are, your deeply authentic self. The Rewire Your Relationship course gives you the tools to rewrite your relationship story, one where you're no longer settling, but thriving. Visit taliabombola.com/rewire your relationships or check the link in the show notes for more. I view it like we are stewards of this profession, and
Mm,
we serve a, hopefully long term, but we serve a role in that client's life, and they do have associations about therapy in connection to us. Hopefully
mm-hmm,
positive, at minimum neutral, but hopefully positive, ideally not negative. If we force, if we push, if we're too by the book from the beginning, then that can be problematic and cause ruptures. But if we're not by the book enough,
mm-hmm,
and then all of a sudden, now I have all these boundaries, they're in their right to be frustrated of, well, you've let 6 late cancels slide. Why all of a sudden is this going to be the one? And they don't know. Maybe we had 7 other people cancel that week, or we got in a fight with our partner, or we didn't sleep well. Right? I
mm,
don't think that's a justification consciously to behave
no.
that way, but there's that transference and countertransference. What is the type of rupture? Is it more of kind of withdraw and I'm pulling back and I'm non confrontational? Or is it more of a confrontational rupture where they're coming at us, addressing what's going on? There's frustration or there's pushback. And that can also happen like in the clinical room of what the material is being
Mm-hmm,
brought in. So it's almost like a chart of like, is this non confrontational or confrontational? And is this the material that's being brought up in therapy, or is this surrounding the therapeutic process? And when clients come in
mm,
attachment wise, if you think about why therapy works in part, it's because we have laws and ethics governing what we do and what we say and who we're allowed to share with or not and for what reason.
mm,
Ideally, same time every week, same room, whether it's Zoom or in person, things stay structured and the same and continuous as a way to mimic secure attachment. When that
Mm,
feels or is threatened, then the response is like how people usually respond when their attachment system gets threatened. Am I going to behave more anxiously? Am I going to behave more avoidantly? So that would be the like withdrawal, non confrontation. Or am I going to then text my therapist 10 times in a row? And hopefully the therapist is not the anxiously attached one, but I've seen that before.
mm,
Oh my gosh. And then I email them and I text them this. And I'm like, stop. Like, what? With my
yeah,
supervisor, I'm
and
like,
you
what?
need to like, yeah, you need to like do a full body scan. Where is that,
I'm like,
right?
you cannot. I'm like, wait for 15 minutes. But sometimes they do feel like there's a
Mhm.
rupture or abandonment comes up with the newer trainees and clinicians
Oh,
that I,
yeah.
newer trainees and associate clinicians that I'm supervising. In the beginning,
Mm,
it is so important that they have that proper supervision to learn how to ride those waves, because it doesn't mean just because a client's running late that they're abandoning you. But
correct.
where's that coming from, right? Like, I'm curious to know more if they're willing to share. We, as the therapist training
Mm,
therapist, can also help set the stage for, I don't care what the confrontation, or excuse me, what the rupture is, I'm equipped to handle it. I'm not going to get
correct.
defensive. I'm going to be curious. How to
Mhm.
navigate this, especially like you're saying, with holding those boundaries. It's a business. When I used to only see teens, and especially during COVID, parents would come in and I'm like, great, you sign the informed consent, you this. And some of the feedback with the cancellation policy, whatever. And I remember one time it was worded similarly of like, well, they're upset that you run your business. I said, like a business? Interesting. Any other business, there's not pushback on this. You don't go to your dentist and barter with them or say, like any other office, you willingly accept whatever the fee is
Mhm.
or the thing and you don't bat an eye. But because this is relational, or because I might be the face of my business in some way, it's okay to do that. So then it becomes, how do you contain and maintain the therapeutic relationship, but also address what those ruptures are in the clinical sense. And sometimes
Mhm.
therapy is great, but they're not adherent, or they can't pay, or they refuse to pay, or they're calling their credit card company disputing charges of services already rendered. And that part is causing the rupture. So
Oh, yeah.
sometimes clinical side, and then sometimes it's the more business, ethical, legal side of things that causes the rupture, at least from what I've seen. I'm curious what you think.
I think our graduate programs do a really poor job of getting us ready to be our own business owners. And
Yes.
so something that like sticks out to me to this day, and this woman was an amazing individual in my life, was an incredible mentor, but it's also good for you to recognize the advice your mentors give that aren't good. And I remember her saying, Adam, you have to realize, when we were talking about like financial security, she was like, you have to realize you're in the service industry. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you have to accept that this is more missional work. Like you're just wanting to make sure that people are healthy, and this is you giving back to society, and so you're not going to be rewarded in compensation. And I remember just being like,
Huh.
okay, all
Yeah.
right, like, but to your point, we as therapists don't work traditional business hours. It's
No,
not like we can do 40-hour weeks. Like,
no.
and if we are, then we're already headed towards burnout.
Yeah.
We might see somewhere between 20 to 24 individuals a
Yeah. But
week.
that is like full time,
That's
considering
yeah.
full time
And
threshold.
so I've had conversations with clients that again have like sort of dismissed our work. I remember another one that, yeah, it was that damn cancellation charge, but said, you do realize that people just pay you to have conversations, right? And I said, it's fascinating. I've never thought of it that way. That's an awesome way of thinking about it, though. And he's
Mhm.
like, yeah. I was like, but then that means you would have people in your life you could have these conversations with.
And not have to pay.
And it was like silence, right? It was crickets. And I wasn't trying to ice pick him back,
Right.
but it's just like, I'm not in the service industry. I'm in the value industry. I
Mm,
provide value through the services that I provide, but
correct.
there's value in it. If you don't find any value in sitting down with me or sitting down with your own therapist,
Right.
then leave, move
Yes.
on.
Yeah.
Please do not stay.
No.
But I
Especially.
think that that's also what um, leads to ruptures being what they are, is people get into positions of resentment. They
Hmm.
stick it out.
Mhm.
Like, oh, well, maybe I'm supposed to stay longer with this therapist. Maybe, like, no, listen to your intuition. But like to your point, don't fire the the fitness instructor for being a fitness instructor if you're not actually following the work. Like, it wasn't that you
Yeah,
had a bad fitness coach. You
correct.
didn't follow his information. That might be the same thing in the therapist,
Right.
but you may still need to resonate differently with someone else. Like,
Yes.
oh, what you're providing me, solid. It's just not in a way I can receive it.
Right. Yes. And the ability to recognize if you are noticing something is going against your expectations, right? Like, let's say that
Mm,
the cancellation policy is a great one. It's written on minus 48 hours, especially with childcare and scheduling and whatever else. And I'm very not, I will charge it for sure, but I'm generous in the sense of if you let me know like at the 47th hour and I can
yeah.
fill time and this and whatever else, I won't necessarily charge the full thing. But if it's not for an emergency reason, right? Like that's where there's
Mhm.
the filter that the clinician or the provider gets to not pick and choose, but kind of pick and choose in a way.
Mhm.
And I value the therapeutic relationship overall. And I do work with clients where they will cancel last minute or within the window. And I am now at a point in my career where I get the message of like, and I know you got to charge me. Thanks. See you next week. And I'm like, great. Like it goes off without a hitch. But in the beginning, there may have been more apprehension about that and adhering to
Mhm.
the policy. That's on us to hold those boundaries and those structures. So if the therapist is charging you and you canceled out of the 24 hours, like you're good, you
Mhm.
should get charged and you notice the charge, that's the time to confront like, hey, what's going on
Oh,
here?
yeah.
And sometimes it's a mistake, right? Oh, it was an on auto
Correct.
pay, so sorry. And other times they're like, well, it was actually this kind of hours. You get to be like, I don't want to work with someone like that. If you
Mhm.
like their clinical work, but not all of the policies that or their schedule, right? That could be
Mhm.
interfering. You don't have to work with that therapist. Or you might then make the
Mm.
exception of I didn't want to go out of network for whatever it is, but I really need a specialist. So I'm willing to pay more
Correct.
to see that person even though my budget might, right? So there's all these decisions that we make, but if you're
Mhm.
making one out of what feels like obligation or not well thought out, to your point, that is
Mhm.
where resentment kicks in, mismatched expectations to reality, and I'm sacrificing or over giving either the therapist to the client or the client to the therapist. Those are some of the more common reasons why rupture can happen, and then knowing how to
Mhm.
repair, I think we can cover that before we wrap up this episode. I think it's on the therapist side, but I also think it's on the client side. If we have no clue, like truly no clue that a comment that I've said to other clients, they're like, oh my God, thanks. That's like great advice or feedback or whatever. And I say it to you, and this is the people pleasing side. Some people are like, oh my God, thanks. And then the next week they're like, I actually hated it. And it's like, how would I have known? You affirmed it in session and now, and people are allowed to change their mind, but teaching people to be more confrontational. I love to do that in therapy. And I love when I work with clients on confidence and assertiveness
Mhm.
and they start doing it to me. And I'm like, yes, now the student becomes the master. Like
Mamma mia.
I'm not, I look for that. Sometimes I'm
Oh,
like, damn,
absolutely.
I don't like receiving this, but this is the goal of therapy. So,
Alright, let's dial back the bitchness.
okay, so yeah, that's my job. Hold on.
Yeah, yeah.
Knowing how to repair, I do think it comes from initiating. If we perceive something may have been off, doesn't hurt to double check with the client. Hey, last week when I said this, the energy shifted, maybe just for me, but the energy
Mhm.
shifted after that happened. If you're willing to share, am I on the right track? And some
Yeah.
clients are like, that actually had nothing to do with it, but thank you for saying it. I'll keep it in mind. Or they're like, yeah, I didn't want to really bring it up. So you, as the therapist, have, my view, the job to be addressing those things, which requires you to be present in your sessions and to
Mhm.
your clients to perceive or get ahead of potential ruptures.
Yeah, I mean, and what a beautiful way of basically saying you cannot resent someone for their behaviors if you've never addressed it.
Yes.
So, like, you don't get to be annoyed or frustrated with a certain behavior or a statement if you never addressed it. It's
Mhm.
different if you say, "Hey, this is off limits," or
Right.
I didn't feel very seen or heard in
Yeah.
this," and
Right.
then that person continues to do that. That's a boundary violation. But I can't be moving through a landmine field and just traipsing over things that are huge, like on your heart buttons, and not be read into that,
Yeah.
you
Very
know?
true. That's why having informed consent and
Mhm.
acknowledgement and, like, there's a structure of what to expect, and then there may be other subconscious expectations that get addressed
Mhm.
inadvertently along the way, but there's there's confines and structures and ethics and all that and laws for a reason, and then within that, there's the play space of actually having exploration and psychotherapy. If
Correct.
you like working with your therapist and there is a rupture, please address it with them. And you can also reference, like, this episode sometimes can help, having like a neutral third of like, hey, I was just listening to this podcast and I heard about ruptures and it sounds like this thing that I've been kind of wrestling with even bringing up to you. Can we talk about it? Most of the time the client fears addressing confrontation because of their own transference and their own history. Maybe
Mhm.
it never went well with them in their personal life and they have a track record of it blowing up or exploding whenever
Mm.
you try to address it, almost sometimes regardless of how they bring it up. Sometimes it is how they bring it up. What a gift in therapy to be able to have a corrective experience around addressing, hey, I didn't like that that happened, and here's what I want instead in the future.
Mhm.
Thanks for letting me know. Let's move forward. It's really not that difficult, but
It
people,
can actually be quite like the experiential side of it is awe-inspiring
yes, true.
because the beauty of it is you get to come into the therapeutic alliance and you get to say, I don't have to hold space for my therapist.
Mhm.
I do not have to be emotional containment for my therapist.
Right.
And you get to use them probably the most genuine I statements, speaking about the
Mhm.
reality that you experienced, what you're frustrated with, and then being able to leave it out there. And if your therapist is a good therapist,
Yeah.
they know how to meet you in the moment of like what that repair would look like,
Hmm.
of being able to like, oh wow, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize that you would take that comment that way, I
Right.
apologize, that's not what I intended, but I can see that absolutely you had a right to be offended.
Hmm. Yeah, and to move forward if the client
Mm-hmm.
wants to, but also respect if they
Because
don't.
this is where every like this is the social get off point is right here when conflict shows up, right? Let's ghost, let's disappear, let's never, like at that point we then have to auto assign good and bad. I'm a
Mhm,
good person, they're a bad person, and that's why I
mhm,
never came back.
mhm. It's coming.
And
Yeah.
it's an easy narrative to write, but it's a very difficult life to live. And so how are you going to navigate that? I'm like, no, I don't actually want you to sort of set fire to things and walk away from them
Right.
without first saying why they're no longer important. Because
Yeah,
all you're doing is running away by a different means.
yeah, and you can't, wherever you go, there you are. You're just gonna cut off everything that you don't like. That's not really mature. It's very passive
Correct.
aggressive. It's not a way to live and actually maintain relationships. So even if it's like the movie The Breakup with Jennifer
Mm,
and Vince Vaughn, I love that movie for many reasons, but especially because at the end they actually do split up. Sorry, spoiler alert. Stop listening if you haven't seen it. They break up and they have this like what could have been moment where they walk past
mm,
each other and he's like, oh, we should catch up, and she based from what I recall is like, I'm like, yeah, but I'm good. Like, they didn't get back together just because he did the trite movie script theme of getting the woman to the point of no return, right? Or getting to the point of I don't want to do this anymore, the
mm-hmm,
therapeutic relationship, addressing it. It doesn't mean we have to continue the relationship just because we forgive the rupture. That's what I want.
mm,
The goal doesn't necessarily have to be maintaining and continuing the
no,
relationship as to why you're bringing it up. The goal is I don't want this to get left unsaid, and I don't want loose ends psychologically in my
mm,
journey. And I would like to leave that in the past, or I'd like to
correct.
have a 2.0 and move forward with you knowing now more, me knowing now more. That is a topic that we're going to need to take some extra TLC on,
Mic drop.
as we do. So that also sets the stage for our next episode, talking about like the kind of ghosting and breadcrumbing, not in a therapeutic relationship, though that does happen. This is more in a dating relationship. So tune in for that episode in a couple weeks.
We will see you soon. Thank you for letting us have your ears.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Between Two Clinicians. We would so appreciate if this episode resonated with you for you to share it with somebody, and also find your favorite podcast platform and like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast. We would love to attract more listeners just like you and have this message be spread to whoever needs it. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.